Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. The sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the room, yet a chill settled over me as I paused at the dresser. Something was amiss, a subtle shift that prickled at the back of my mind. The array of framed photos that chronicled our lives together, holidays, anniversaries, and lazy Sundays, seemed unchanged at first glance. But as I drew closer, the void became undeniable. The picture from our wedding, the one where we were laughing under a shower of confetti, was conspicuously absent. Why would she move that photo? I muttered to myself, tracing the thin layer of dust where the frame once stood. It had been her favorite, always given pride of place. The unease that had been building over the past few weeks intensified, turning the wheels of suspicion in my mind. Days turned into restless nights, each tick of the clock a loud echo in the silent tension of our home. The change in Lydia's behavior was slight but significant, a missed dinner here, a forgotten kiss goodbye there. She attributed it to stress at work, but the seed of doubt had already been planted. Driven by a gnawing need for the truth, I made a decision that would alter the course of our lives forever. I installed a hidden camera in our bedroom, telling myself it was just to ease my mind, to prove that my fears were unfounded. Yet, deep down, I feared what it might reveal. Weeks passed. The camera sat discreetly behind a stack of books, its presence now just another fixture in the room like the lamp or the curtains. Eventually, I gathered the courage to review the footage, my heart hammering against my chest as I loaded the video on my laptop. The room on the screen was bathed in the dim light of an evening lamp, the bed neatly made. Then the door opened, and Lydia walked in, not alone, but with him, my father. The shock was visceral, a punch to the gut. They didn't speak, there was no need. Their actions spoke volumes. Lydia, dressed in a provocative latex suit, and my father, eager and betraying every familial bond with a gleeful grin. The video continued, a grotesque tableau that seared into my memory. The betrayal was not just of the heart, but of blood and trust. Rage coursed through me, hot and unyielding. I watched, transfixed by the horror, as the two people I trusted most dismantled my life with their deceit. The footage ended, but the inferno of my anger was just beginning. Betrayed by my wife and my father, I felt my world crumble into ash. But from that ash rose a dark resolve. Lydia would know the pain she had inflicted. She would understand the cost of her betrayal. I began to plan my revenge meticulously. It would be calculated, leaving nothing to chance. Lydia's social standing, her career, her personal life, I would dismantle them piece by piece. As for my father, he would lose more than he could imagine. They had taken everything from me, and in return, I would leave them with nothing. The chapter of our marriage closed with the sharp snap of the photo frame as I removed it from the wall and smashed it into the trash. It was the end of us, and the beginning of their downfall. I turned away from the wreckage, the first step of my revenge plan already taking shape in my mind. The morning after I discovered the betrayal, the house felt different, as if the walls themselves whispered secrets back and forth, their murmurs painting shadows on the floor. I moved through these shadows with a purpose, my resolve steeling me for the confrontation that awaited. Lydia was in the kitchen, her back turned, humming softly as she made coffee. The normalcy of the scene grated against the raw wound of my heart. I watched her for a moment, the way her hair cascaded down her shoulders, the familiar rhythm of her movements. It was all a lie. "Lydia," I said, my voice calm, belying the turmoil within. She turned, a smile playing on her lips, unaware of the storm about to break. "Morning, love." "Coffee?" The word love stung, a bitter irony. "We need to talk," I replied, stepping closer. Her smile faltered, eyes narrowing slightly. "About?" "About us. About secrets." I paused, letting the words hang between us. She set down the coffee pot, her posture stiffening. "I don't know what you—" "Stop," I cut in, my voice sharper now. I know about you and him. About the betrayal. The accusation hung heavy in the air. Lydia's face drained of color. I don't understand what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone, tapping to the video, and held it up. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, she faltered, her facade cracking. How long? I demanded. It's not what it looks like, she whispered, a standard line of defense crumbling in her trembling voice. It's exactly what it looks like. How long, Lydia? The silence stretched, taut as a wire. Then, in a barely audible voice, she confessed, 3 months. The admission was a blow, even though I had braced for it. Why him? Why my own father? Tears pooled in her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. It just happened. I'm so sorry, I never meant to hurt you. Sorry doesn't even begin to cover it. My voice was cold, detached. I needed to act, to reclaim some semblance of control. I want you out, I stated. Out of this house. Please, let's talk about this. There's nothing left to discuss. I cut her off, my decision irrevocable. Lydia pleaded, her voice breaking. Where will I go? Not my concern anymore. I turned away, unable to bear the sight of her. As she packed her things, sobbing quietly, I felt a grim satisfaction. This was just the beginning. My plan for retribution was more elaborate, involving not just her expulsion from our home but a systematic dismantling of every part of her life she held dear. Once she left, the house was eerily silent. I sat alone, surrounded by the remnants of a life I thought we shared. The first phase of my revenge complete, I now turned my attention to my father. He would not escape unscathed. My next move was clear, and it would strike at the heart of his world, just as he had shattered mine. The afternoon was gray, the clouds hanging heavy with the threat of rain as I drove to my father's house. My grip on the steering wheel was tight, each turn of the road bringing me closer to the confrontation I had replayed over and over in my mind. As I parked outside the familiar 2-story house, a surge of anger washed over me. This was the home where I had grown up, where he had taught me about life and integrity, all a facade. I stepped out of the car, the cool air biting at my skin, my resolve hardening with each step to the front door. I rang the bell, and after a few moments, he answered. My father looked older suddenly, his eyes widening slightly in surprise, or was it guilt, as he saw me standing there. Son, what are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be at work? He asked, his voice tentative. We need to talk, I said curtly, pushing past him into the house. About what? He asked, closing the door, a note of concern creeping into his voice. About you and Lydia, I said, turning to face him. The words felt like poison on my tongue. He stiffened, his face paling. How did you find out? The camera in my bedroom, I replied coldly. I saw everything. His mouth opened and closed, searching for words. Look, I can explain. There's nothing to explain, I interrupted him, my voice rising. You betrayed me. With my own wife. He ran a hand through his hair, looking defeated. I'm sorry. I know it was wrong, but it just happened. We didn't mean to hurt you. Sorry. You destroy my marriage, and all you can say is you're sorry. My voice echoed in the quiet room, heavy with betrayal. We should have told you. It was a mistake, he continued, trying to approach me. A mistake? No, a mistake is losing your keys, not sleeping with your son's wife. I snapped, stepping back, my heart racing. There was a pause, heavy and uncomfortable. Then, with a breath, I continued, I want nothing to do with you anymore. You're no father to me. His face crumpled slightly. Please, don't say that. I know I've made a terrible mistake. Let me make it up to you. I shook my head, the decision firm in my heart. It's too late for that. I'm here to tell you, stay away from me and my life. As he stood there, a broken man, I turned and left, the finality of the moment sealing the widening rift between us. The drive back home was a blur, my mind racing with the next steps of my plan. Lydia's professional reputation was next. I had gathered enough evidence of her indiscretions to create ripples in her workplace. This was just the beginning. She had taken everything from me, and I was going to make sure she paid for it. My revenge was far from over, it had only just begun. The world seemed sharper somehow, every color, every sound intensified by the cold fuel of my vengeance. As I walked into Lydia's office building, a folder tucked under my arm containing proof of her infidelity and deceit, I felt an eerie calm settle over me. This was the day her world would crumble. Lydia was presenting to her colleagues and superiors in the main conference room, her voice echoing confidently through the slightly ajar door. I waited, timing my entrance for maximum impact. As I pushed the door open, all heads turned toward me, surprise etched on their faces. "Excuse the interruption," I began, my voice steady, commanding the room. "But there are some truths about Lydia that all of you should know." Lydia's eyes widened in shock, her facade cracking as she saw the documents in my hand. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, moving towards me. I spread the documents across the conference table, photos and texts laid bare for all to see. "Showing your true character," I replied coldly. Her colleagues murmured, shuffling closer to glimpse the evidence of her betrayal. Lydia tried to speak, to explain, but her words fell flat as the stark reality of her actions became undeniable. "You destroyed our marriage, Lydia," I said, my voice echoing in the now silent room. "And now I will make sure everyone knows the kind of person you really are." She reached for the documents, tearing at them, desperation in her eyes. "You can't do this. Please." "It's done," I stated flatly, watching as her professional reputation shattered with each torn piece of paper. I left her there, amidst the chaos of her own making, and headed next to confront my father one last time. He was in his study, a room filled with memories of better days. He looked up, startled as I entered. "We need to finish this," I declared. "I've lost everything already," he said, his voice weary. "Isn't that enough?" "Not yet," I replied, a plan forming in my mind. "You will confess everything, publicly. It's time the world knew the kind of man you really are." Facing ruin, he had little choice but to agree. Together, we recorded his confession, his voice hollow as he recounted his betrayal. I posted it online, where it spread like wildfire, a scandal that consumed all his remaining dignity. With my revenge complete, I felt a hollow victory. Lydia's career was in ruins, her personal life shattered. My father was a pariah, his relationships and reputation destroyed. In the final throes of my plan, I sold the house, erasing every last trace of my old life. The money from the sale was enough to start anew, far from the ghosts of my past. As I boarded a plane to a distant land, I reflected on the cost of betrayal. Lydia and my father had lost everything because of their actions, but so had I. In my quest for retribution, I had sacrificed the man I once was. The plane lifted off, carrying me toward a new horizon, the land below shrinking into nothingness. I was free from them forever, but at what cost? The question lingered, a shadow that might never fully recede.